Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I just had a couple of comments here at the beginning of the video about the tragic events that unfolded on Friday evening, and really they revolve around the excellence of the United States National Weather Service. Every single one of those storms was warned. In fact, some of them had multi-county warnings that were out up to 30 to 90 minutes before the storm got there. Now, that doesn't lessen the impact, but I'm just proud to be a part of a weather system here in the United States that has the technology to do that. One of our great resources is the Storm Prediction Center, and throughout their handling of this event, you can tell that where they assess that risk, all of the storm reports fell within inside of it, and that's just another success of the group of forecasters here that work for NOAA. But it doesn't lessen the impact. We still had 57 reports of tornadoes here on Friday, and of course more severe weather that got over to the east on the following day on Saturday. And as the storm system went through, it did cause a lot of destruction. You've probably seen a lot about the supercell that they call it the quad state supercell. Began in parts of Arkansas, clipped through Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky. At one point, we could measure from front to beginning about 600 miles of track length. Well, in the middle of it, it hit the town of Mayfield, and you've heard a lot about Mayfield over the last couple of days. I would just like to show you a fascinating but also terrifying radar image here, because the debris ball right here, which is where the radar was scanning through the debris in the tornado, actually produced what we call the three-body scatter, which is where the radar beam coming from this location bounces off of several large objects and gives us these false echoes you see here extending away from the debris ball. That just tells us this is a powerful system, a powerful tornado. So inside that hook echo, we measured gate-to-gate wind speeds that far exceeded 200 miles an hour. And you can see here that some of the debris was actually lofted over 30,000 feet. There was some evidence too that stuff that was in Mayfield was transported over 200 miles away. Some of it was found in Louisville. So this was an extremely powerful event. Now, to keep up to date on the National Weather Service's survey that, I want you to go to weather.gov, great website here, and then come down and click on or about where Mayfield is, which is in this part of Kentucky. And when you get there, you'll be taken to the National Weather Service office at Paducah. And at the top, they have these news headlines. They will update right here what the survey tells them about this event. Now, currently, they found it to be about 3/4 of a mile wide, and they have a preliminary EF rating of a 3 or greater. So they got wind speeds estimated at up to 206 miles an hour. Now, I am not a professional storm surveyor, so this is just my amateur experience. But as I was looking through some of the pictures and photos, you can see some of them up here or come down to the bottom. When you start to see trees stripped all the way down to their just to the base of the trunk here, and when we see houses completely being leveled with no standing walls, we're starting to push up here into this EF4, EF5 category. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get to the EF5 ranking out of this particular storm. So again, come back to this website again. It's the National Weather Service out of Paducah. They're going to have the latest updates there. Now, when all was said and done, we did get quite a bit of precipitation out of this. You're looking at the last 7 days of total accumulated precip, and some of these storms streaked through. They also produced hail and some very heavy rainfall. But much of what you got on the backside here, this was all snow, and we've had some big snows coming into the west. In fact, take a look at this. This is just the last 3 days worth of snowfall. Let's start west and go east. Cascade Mountains, getting into the Sierra Nevada. Now, the Sierra Nevada are getting hammered right now on Monday evening, but up to this point, it was the Cascades that picked up anywhere between 12 and 36 inches of snow. Putting down big snow here in parts of the northern Rockies, just north of the Snake River Valley, and like the Salmon River Valley and the Payette National Forest. And take a look at the central Rockies here, adding quite a bit of snow as well. But a lot of what you see here was pretty short-lived. In fact, I was looking at it on satellite, even though this was deep snow into this area. The warmth that followed really started to erode this away. In fact, by Saturday, our snow swath, you see it right in through here, was already melting from the south. And take a look, from Saturday to Sunday, it advanced even farther to the north. A little bit of cloud mixed in there, making it difficult to see. But from Sunday into Monday, now it's really shrinking in area. And given some of the temperatures we're about to see, the snow is going to melt in a big way very quickly. Okay, what I'm excited about for that snow melt is that it's going to put moisture back into the soil and through this area. And that's a region, when looking at the top 40 centimeters or 16 inches, we still have a large section of the country that is below 2 to 5%. Regions I'm going to continue to be concerned about include the Mid-Atlantic to the Carolinas, and one area we got to talk about right now is part of the Southern Plains, because we're going to be witnessing some very, very strong winds coming through this area, ripping through the hard red winter wheat belt here in the next 48 hours or so. If we take a look at that, it's going to be spurred along by this deep trough that's cutting into the west. So when you see this trough, there we go, this one right here. As of this evening on Monday, almost a perpendicular shot against the Sierra Nevada. So we're talking the possibility of 3 to 5 feet of snow there, maybe better than 2 to 3 feet in the Klamath Mountains. But then a large ridge is what's happening on the eastern side of it. So a lot of warmth already returning to this area. But this trough will eventually make it over the plains, and it will emerge as a low in Colorado and Wyoming and start to move its way out into the plains by the 15th. And that's where my concern comes in, because look at how strong these winds are out of the west and then coming out of the south here. And those strong winds at times may gust 60 to 70 miles an hour, but with them we're going to see extremely warm conditions. This is the temperatures on Wednesday. The black numbers are the temperatures. The color shading would be the difference from normal. And you can see there's a large section of the country that's 25 to 40 degrees above average. We may hit in the 70s in parts of southern Iowa, just as an example. Now with that, let's get an update here. There we go. This is the latest we have from the All Hazards weather map. And this is a large region where we currently are on the lookout for high winds. Notice in the west, where the deeper trough is still there, there's widespread winter storm warnings, winter weather watches, winter weather advisories. It's all elevation dependent, but it is occupying a big section of the western United States right now. And just to show you, watch this, as that low emerges, let's blow that up a little bit. You're going to notice here that the European model through the end of this week picks up a broad corridor where gusts will be in that 30 to 50 mile an hour range, with a region right in through here that could get winds that are in the 60, 70, and even higher speed category. So we're talking about very, very fast winds coming through that area. Now, I like to cover the long range first. I know a lot of you like to listen to that, so I'm going to talk about winds, but not in the United States. It's these winds over here, our trade winds. Now, the strongest trade winds appear to be backing off of it, which means that they're moving back toward the east. But there is a large tropical cyclone here and another one here that are going to be kind of causing some issue with using the trade winds to assess what is happening with like the MJO or the La Nina. But I want to try to provide some clarity there for you. And it starts here. Now, I said clarity, but I'm going to tell you something. There is going to be a time period coming up over the next probably 3 to 4 weeks of low predictability because of this. You see, that's the nose of the strong trade winds from today through about the solstice. You still have those westerlies coming in from this direction. So the MJO is phase 6 going over to phase 7. But notice past the solstice, what was strong easterly winds becomes slower winds that even at times come out of the west. And we pick up a region over here in the Indian Ocean where we get stronger easterly winds. Now this tells me that this La Nina event is starting to break up in terms of the position, strength, and persistence of the trade winds, something we've been kind of concerned about now happening at the end of this month and in January. And the question is, what does all that mean and what does it do? Well, we study the MJO and La Nina to understand the momentum, the heat, and the wind transport out of the tropics to affect the jet stream, right? And it's ultimately the jet stream that's going to control the weather, for example, across North America. But right now, because of the shifting winds in the tropics, I can show you that any teleconnection we want to look at, like the North Atlantic Oscillation, okay, very positive now, drops off, which means we're going to see some blockings setting up, big ridges here. But look at the spread in the forecast from the European ensemble. That's tremendous spread. Same thing with the East Pacific Oscillation, although increasing past about day 8, a lot of spread. The Arctic Oscillation, which tells us what's going on in the North Atlantic and then into the Arctic, again, very large spread, which reduces our confidence in anything beyond about a day 8, 9, or 10 forecast. And I think it's going to continue to be an issue while we watch two things happen. The La Nina here, the nose of those trades are backing off. It's still going to be a La Nina pattern for a while. In fact, we're still seeing cooling over here in this part of the Pacific. That's Nina region 1 and 2. which is going to affect South America. But the combination of that plus the colder water here is going to give us a highly variable jet stream pattern. And as I think about all of that, my question is, how does it relate to these interactions in the tropics? Now, the European model, the long range, so from now all the way through the 13th of January, just can't seem to break it away from phase 7. Doesn't want to let it come into phase 8 or back over to the Indian Ocean. It just says MJO is going to stay in this general vicinity. And we've now seen that for 3 straight forecasts. So a quick reminder on what that means. We are going to see more persistent ridging over the southeast. That's a common feature when the MJO is in phase 7 in December and there's a La Nina. There could be some high amplitude blocking here coming up over Alaska, here in the North Atlantic or over towards Scandinavia. Well, we could get an extended Pacific jet that does dive into the west, and possibly a lot of that colder air building up into this area of the Canadian Prairie could get let out into the northeast. Now, what happens in the MJO phase 7 going from December into January is that the pattern really becomes amplified. North Atlantic blocking, North Pacific blocking, and a lot of cold air and an active storm track through the midsection of the country. Now, if you put the big ridge in place here, this brings in the flow that pushes up against the east-facing slopes of the mountains. It digs deep and then ejects here through the Ohio River Valley. That means cold air comes in January if the MJO does stay in phase 7. So we ask ourselves, okay, if the model is saying it's going to stay here, what does the model then do with that? Let's just assume that the model is going to be right. Let's make that assumption, then we'll make adjustments. So here it is. This is a 1-week sliding window of temperature pattern. So this is now, but let's just play this out here and let's just stop it during the week of Christmas. See how that colder air is advancing, but some sense of ridging down here is kind of keeping the south warm? Well, you're going to notice as you finish up 2021 and get into 2022, cold air is making it to the east, which we expected. The active and variable Pacific jet keeps the west not only cold, but above average in terms of precip. And my biggest concern is this area right here. We've seen drought expand. We talked about that on Thursday. It stays warm in this area. And the longer range forecast, if we just look at it on a 30-day window, let's just take it all the way out to, 25th of December to 25th of January. That's an area that the models still pick up drier. Very wet in the west. Better moisture for Montana. Better moisture for the Canadian Prairie. I believe it'll be more active into this area. I believe that this area is biased to dry in the forecast. That would be an adjustment that I would make on it. And I believe that at the end of this month and throughout January, there will be significant cold air intrusions that will come into this region. Now, at the end of this video, I'll talk about the impacts that could possibly come from a disruption of the polar vortex. But in the near term, that's not part of the mainstay here. What is happening is this. Watch as I play through the rest of this week and into early next weekend looking at the jet stream pattern. See, we end up developing ridges over Alaska and ridges somewhere between Scandinavia and Greenland. And I believe these patterns are of the block nature. What I mean by that is a lot of meridional north-south flow. So you got a high over a low and a high. Look at this. There's an omega block setting up here as well. And if those blocks set up, what this tends to do is it tends to just put cold air in place here. And you notice it getting out here to the, the 22nd, 23rd of the month, that high over low pattern. This is where the failure point is in this forecast. If neither of these develop, then we have a much more energetic and zonal jet stream pattern, both in the Pacific and the Atlantic. Much of what you're going to see for the remainder of this video depends on the development of these two ridges. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. In the near term, take a look at this. High-res NAM. That deep trough in the west ejects, and we are going to see possibly an area in through here of wind speeds that could easily be gusting in the 60 to 70 plus mile an hour range. Could also be some storms here in the day. Let's see here, day 3. So on Wednesday, we're going to have to watch this region on Wednesday as well. To see that kind of put all together, let me just show you the next week's worth of precipitation anomalies. So the low goes here. This is going to be some snow. The deep trough that starts, keeping things very unsettled in the west, and more systems come into the west with time. Got clippers coming through the Canadian Prairie, so above average precip there. And what ends up occurring here, I'll show you in a few moments, is a stationary boundary that develops toward the end of this week. Notice this region stays drier. and there could be parts of the East Coast that stay drier until the weekend. I'd like to show you that by doing a multi-model analysis here. So the deep trough cuts into the west tonight, see it there, and it just continues to push that moisture over into the Sierra Nevada, into Nevada, through the Snake River Valley, Salmon River Valley, Payette National Forest. They're going to get hit. Now that trough ejects by the time we get into Wednesday morning, Wednesday midday, and Wednesday evening as a low that comes from here and quickly moves to Iowa. So I'm watching out for some storms possibly Wednesday evening in this area, but also in a corridor here. I am not anticipating a severe weather outbreak. Let me be clear about that. But storms in these areas. Now that low, by the time we get into the next morning, so Thursday morning, takes 24 hours to go from here to there in both models. And there's going to be some snow on the backside in the Red River Valley of the North to Lake Winnipeg, and then coming around into parts of Minnesota and northern Wisconsin. But you see this frontal boundary here? It's in both models. It tends to stay there. By the way, while this is occurring on Thursday, the next low moved into the northwest and comes into Northern California. See that here? That's the next one. So what ends up occurring is as we go through the day on Thursday into early Friday morning, we end up getting higher pressure here, higher pressure there, and the boundary gets stuck in between. It is both in both models. So we open up for better precipitation here and the possibility of picking up 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rainfall in this area toward the end of the week. And then as time goes on into the weekend, that begins to take shape of almost like a low pressure center developing here, but a lot of moisture transport out of the Gulf ahead of it. And you can see the models are stretching out a long line of potentially wetter weather. Now take note of this. The European is farther to the east. The GFS has more precip coming back here into Texas, and that's what we need to be keeping a close eye out on. Through the weekend, though, we start to see some disagreement. Now, both models have another low coming in on Saturday night here. The first low starts to exit. Look at this, though. European, more kind of bullish on the snow in the northeast, not so in the in the GFS. And then into early next week, they both get a clipper going through this area, but start to see big differences here. So we have to kind of quit on our multi-model analysis. But let's take a look at what we are expecting in snow, and then we'll kind of wrap this out with what I expect on total precip. The chance of getting 1 inch over the next 5 days. You can see it's highest here, getting back into this area. Now, I'm ignoring purposefully the Canadian Prairie and back into the Intermountain West because looking at 1 inch is just no big deal. But we're going to possibly get some there. Why don't we just look on up there to the possibility of getting 3 inches? And now we start to see this area showing up. So possibly here in northern Minnesota. But just to make a point on it, this area here with that clipper coming through, better chances of snow through the Canadian Prairie. And then as all of this gathers into parts of the the Hudson Bay into Quebec, bigger snows there. But to show you what's coming in the west, let's just step it on up to probability of 24 inches of snow. And now you start to see that area I talked about earlier, which could potentially pick up in the Sierra Nevada starting right now through not only through the next 36 hours, but then continuing after that, maybe 3 to 5 feet of snow. And that is much, much needed snow. If we just look at it here all the way through Saturday, you see we come off the color bar. So that's why we see such high snowfall amounts here. So this is good to pack this up if you want to take a vacation to ski. I love seeing this. But too much mild air in place in the near term to really get snow pretty far to the south. But we will talk about if that's going to get replaced anytime soon. But in terms of total accumulated precipitation, liquid equivalent, here where it's going to be snow, I like the WPC's outlook from 12Z today. I do believe where that stationary front sets up, we do have a corridor in the air from the mid-south into the Ohio River Valley of picking up better than 1.5 inches of precip. And in California, very, very wet. And right now we're targeting the Central Valley with the strongest onshore winds and wettest conditions, at least on Monday evening. But with other systems coming through here, I'm buying into this pretty well. Don't like this because that's the corridor that's going to have the strong winds initially, and we don't see the wetter weather coming in. Does that ever change? Let's just go out there to about day 10. Big Ridge, Gulf of Alaska, see the ridge here between Greenland and Scandinavia. That was in the GFS, and it's also in the European. And that flow comes in like this. Now, will the ridge be here in the subtropics, or will it be there? That's what we don't know. Because when I look out here, just using the European as guidance, it tries to keep an active corridor in there, but it wants to keep drier conditions back in this area. I do buy into this. I buy into better precipitation coming into Montana as well. But I have to agree a bit more with the GFS ensemble, keeping this whole area active Again, drier risks remain in the southern plains, but above average in the west and an active corridor through there is what I think will be the most probable solution looking out fully into week 2, which gets us, through that third week of the month of December. Now, since we're talking about December, I want to show you where we currently stand on temperatures compared to average. This is climate district. By climate district, we're looking at average temperature ranks, and actually you can't find one here that is below average. So we've been very warm. Maybe one, I guess we could say, right down here in this part of California. And with the temperatures you're about to see, we're only going to add to this. Watch this. There's Monday's highs. We've already witnessed those. Let's go into Tuesday. Look at the warm-up that's happening here as those strong winds emerge in the warm sector of that cyclone. By Wednesday, you've already seen these temperatures, but we're talking 20 to 40 degrees above average. Now, the front moves this to the east by Thursday. You can see it right in through there. We've got the cold air coming into the backside here. And by the time you get into Friday morning, we're talking single digits in the northern plains. But this is where the boundary stalls out right here for the weekend, adding quite a bit of rainfall into this area, especially in through here, okay? And then moving forward from Friday into Saturday, and then into Sunday, this temperature pattern is going to be in quite a bit of a flux. Until we stretch this out a little farther, there we go. What I want to do here, let's get that turned back off, there you go, is we look out here day 5 through 10, and that's the cold air beginning to advance out of the Canadian prairie. The southeastern ridge in place, but day 5 through 10 to day 10 through 15, this is what we can see at times with MJO phase 7. Milder south, but a lot of cold air poised to come through in the middle, let's call it the third week, and then the last week of the month of December. And this is all building up here to be let out in the month of January. Now, I mentioned to you earlier, what about the polar vortex? I guess you could say it's behaving right now. It's over the North Pole, and it is strong, okay? If this becomes stretched or elongated or disrupted or slowed down, then we got to be on the lookout for it. And I'm concerned about the big ridges that are building here and here. Could possibly start to squeeze this polar vortex, but not until January, because its current strength right now is still well above the climatological average. So if there's going to be a disruption that's going to affect North American weather, it's not going to be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It'll be beyond that time frame. And one last thing to finish up with, because I did this on Thursday. If we do take the GFS forecast model out there to the week of Christmas, we're going to watch here from the 22nd to the 23rd. Okay, the west got quite a bit of snow coming through, but I see this corridor here possibly seeing some snow as we approach Christmas. So just want to show you what to be on the lookout for there. So that's kind of what we're seeing. It's still too far out to pin down with any model. I'll wrap it up there. Hope you all have a good rest of your week, and I'll get preparing for Thursday. Thanks.